Hello and welcome to Liberty Wolf, episode number 31. Today is Independence Day, July 4th, 2021, and I'm grateful you're here with me. Um, I hope to just say a few short words in commemoration of this beautiful, wonderful, inspired holiday. You know, the word holiday comes from holy day. There are few holier days than Independence Day. This is a special time that especially is important to Americans. But honestly, it's important for the whole world. It was an epoch changing event. Now, before I begin, I want to apologize for the beeping sound you hear. It's not a problem I can rectify at the moment. I know a lot of people have said, hey, great video, but that beeping sound's driving me crazy. It's driving me crazy too. And I'll get that fixed hopefully sooner than later. But focus on the content now instead of the other distractions. Okay, that's I beg of you. But thank you for being here, especially any new subscribers. We've had a few recently. I'm really grateful for all of you, and I encourage you to please tell people about these videos. I think this is a wonderful platform to be able to speak to people through. Um, Now YouTube is getting pretty oppressive, and they're getting a little trigger happy with the censorship. I mean, this hate symbol here, the American flag, that might not, that might not fly. But while I have breath in my lungs, I will continue to salute this flag um, and all other variations of that flag, and to honor the men who died to raise that flag, to keep it here, to obtain and then maintain our liberty throughout time. Those men who wrote down their names on a piece of paper in July 1776 that said, we declare independence from the greatest empire in the world, and we are tired of this tyrannical regime oppressing us. We want to be free. God created us free. We will be free with His help. Those men I revere. I wrote an article on my website today, theamericancitadel.com. I put 3 articles out this year for Independence Day, 2 today and 1 on the 2nd. Um, so go look those up. The first one is called Blood Bought America. Talk about how the fact that here in America, this republic that we have, that we enjoy, it was purchased with blood. Our rights were atoned for with the blood of patriots. The tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants. That's what Thomas Jefferson said. That's correct. That's history. He's not saying anything controversial. That's history. Just read history. Look it up. Uh, so I'm grateful for the blood of patriots, those people who sacrificed willingly because they wanted a better future for their posterity. They loved freedom and liberty enough to sacrifice, to bleed, to die for it, to spend all their treasure and their toil and their tears and sweat for this great, amazing goal. They knew what they were doing is inspired by God. They knew that they were doing what their duty was to Him and to their fellow man, was to fight for freedom. So our faith, our families, our freedom, those 3 things, faith, family, freedom, those are the most important things of all. We need to defend those at all costs. If you have a family, look at them and know that there are people in the world, people combined together on an international scale, who want to destroy them, who want to warp their minds, who want to tear them down and bring them down into bondage. But we're not going to let them. It's not going to happen. A lot of our rights have been taken away and eroded. Have been given away is a better way to say it, right? We've been apathetic. We haven't done what we should have, especially those of us who are Christians, especially those of us on the right. No, we're just right. It's not the right, but we're just right. Those of us who are constitutionalists, who want small government, who believe in limited government, right? Who want just an organization to follow these enumerated powers and let us do the rest for ourselves. It's rule of law. It's federalism. The Constitution. Right? All of these great things. We've kind of failed. Now there's a mass awakening happening. Hallelujah for that, I guess. It's kind of a little late, but sometimes that's human nature, that you have to suffer in order to learn. Unfortunately, it's that way. Why is that way? I think there's a lot of things, a lot of reasons for that, but that would go pretty far into religion, and I'm not here to preach a sermon today, other than a sermon in favor of liberty, I guess you could say. But so let's focus on the freedom, why we're here today. Independence Day, this rebel flag, right? You are my fellow rebels if you believe in this flag with these 13 stars and what they stood for. Those men of 1776, the sons of liberty, they were patriots, right? They risked everything. They pulled up their muskets and fired on the British redcoats when they came to take their guns and Lexington and Concord, when they came to arrest the Patriot leaders like Sam Adams and John Hancock. Okay, Christian men stood up there. Jonas Parker, or Captain Parker, right? He stood up there with his militiamen on the green as 800 or more British redcoats stood across from them, leveled their muskets and fired. Damn you rebels, disperse. I think that's the quote, if I recall off the top of my head. Disperse, damn you. And so they thought, well, there's only a few of us and a lot of British. We're not going to give up our guns like they told us to, because they told them to drop their weapons and leave. They said, but we'll slowly withdraw. And then the British fired, and then we fired back, and the war had begun. So they came to take our guns, to destroy our means of defending all our other rights. Because that's what guns are. It's not about the weapon, the firearm. It's all about the right of self-defense, the means of safeguarding the rest of your rights as freemen. And we're freemen. That's a word we don't use a lot today. Freemen, freemen, freemen. That's what we are. We're patriots. We're freemen. Okay? God give us our freedom. No one else can take it from us. I mean, they can deny it temporarily, but that can't be rooted out of us. It's inside here. Let it come out. Show it. Stand up. Okay? So I have a few things that I would like to read today, just briefly. I'm not gonna waste a lot of time. I'm just gonna get right to it. And the first thing I want to cite is the Declaration of Independence. Right? That's what we're talking about today. That's what we're celebrating. Independence. Thomas Jefferson, red-headed Jefferson, he wrote this. Now, I'm not going to quote from the Declaration. You all know. I'm going to quote just a small bit from Thomas Jefferson's original draft. Okay? The wording is slightly different. I actually like it a little bit more in a lot of respects. So Jefferson said this, quote, "We hold these truths to be sacred and undeniable, that all men are created equal and independent, that from that equal creation they derive rights inherent and inalienable, among which are the preservation of life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these ends, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government shall become destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundations on such principles, and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to effect their safety and happiness." Close quote. Our rights and these truths are sacred and undeniable, right? Our rights are sacred and undeniable. That's what he was saying there. Self-evident is another word, but sacred and undeniable. That's a little bit more powerful, don't you think? It really gets that religious connotation that all of our founding fathers, to a man, each one of them believed in, that this was a duty they owed to God. Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson, they both had a slogan: rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. Rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. This rebel flag, they were called rebels, right? This is the rebel flag. The American flag is the rebel flag. They stood up against tyrants and against tyranny the whole world over. People came from all over, France and Prussia and different places, to fight for us in the cause of freedom. Not only for the people here in the colonies, former colonies, but for the idea of freedom. America became this home of rebels worldwide. People who were tired, sick and tired of being oppressed, having their rights denied by tyrannical governments, by despots, by popes, by all sorts of religious gurus, by political zealots, by warmongers, by people who wanted power, by emperors. They were sick and tired of it. They just wanted their own freedom. They wanted to have self-rule, self-government, to have stewardship over their own rights, and to take responsibility for themselves over their own property. Just let me live. Don't steal my money. Don't steal my rights. Don't stifle me. You know, don't press me into service in wars of conquest. Just let me live. So people came out from all over to engage in that. That's what America is. The shining city on a hill, is it not? It was supposed to be. And so we need to remember what this is all about, what America's for, what 1776 and this great flag stand for, why the Declaration of Independence is so important, other than just, the fun fact that it was, the founding document of our nation. But see, there are a lot of founding documents. Here's one from July 6th, 1775, just 1 year before the Declaration. This is called Declaration of the Causes and Necessity of Taking Up Arms. Again, after Lexington and Concord, we put this out. Our founding fathers did. And they said this, quote, "Our cause is just, our union is perfect, our internal resources are great, and if necessary, foreign assistance is undoubtedly attainable. We gratefully acknowledge as signal instances of the divine favor towards us that his providence would not permit us to be called into this severe controversy until it were grown up to our present strength, had been previously exercised in warlike operation, and possessed of the means of defending ourselves. With hearts fortified with these animating reflections, we most solemnly, before God and the world, declare that, exerting the utmost energy of those powers which our beneficent Creator hath graciously bestowed upon us, the arms we have been compelled by our enemies to assume, we will, in defiance of every hazard, with unabating firmness and perseverance, employ for the preservation of our liberties, being with one mind resolved to die freemen rather than to live slaves." So in other words, in modern vernacular, you could say, better dead than red, right? Patrick Henry, give me liberty or give me death. Molon Labi, Sic Semper Tyrannis. All of these are in the same vein. Rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. We will not sit by and allow tyrants to squash us, to crush us under their jackboot. It's not going to happen, at least not here in America. That's what our founding fathers said in 1776. They had families they loved. They understood their rights. They were studying in history. They knew what to do. They knew what it took, what it would require, but they believed it was the right thing to do, and they did it, and they gave to us the greatest country in history. Make America great again? Yes, we need to. But how did America become great in the first place? The institutions that these men created, those made America great. The Constitution, the emphasis on our freedom, on our faith, on the families, the family unit which undergirds everything, okay, on promulgating virtue. Okay, all of our founding fathers, all of them, believed that it was preposterous to assume that liberty could be maintained without purity of heart, without virtue, without Christian principles. John Adams said this in 1776, just before the signing of the Declaration. He said this, "The only foundation of a free constitution is pure virtue, and if this cannot be inspired into our people in a greater measure than they have it now, they may change their rulers and the forms of government, but they will not obtain a lasting liberty. They will only exchange tyrants and tyrannies." It's the same thing with voting every 4 years. You keep voting the Republican, Democrat. None of it's ever going to change. It doesn't matter if you put Trump back in. It doesn't matter if Biden's in there. It doesn't really matter. None of that's going to change. You're exchanging tyrants and tyrannies, one corrupt party for another. You're maintaining this corrupt bureaucracy and just cycling through musical chairs, the same type of people who are in Washington, D.C. Okay? None of that matters ultimately. None of that will help us. None of that will save us unless we internalize what the Founding Fathers stood for. Their principles. Okay? Pure virtue. Christian religion. We need these things. Truth. We need this to be inculcated back into our minds, into our family, into our children, into our textbooks, into society at large, into Hollywood, everywhere. It needs to be just blared out there over the loudspeaker constantly, shouted from the rooftops, these principles of liberty. Because if we don't change our thinking, if we don't change our conduct, it doesn't matter. We're going to lead to civil war. It's going to be brutal tribalism, Mad Max all over again. So we need an internal reformation first and foremost. Now, let me quote another founding father, John Witherspoon. He said this, again, just prior to the signing of the Declaration of Independence. He said this in May 1776 in a sermon, The Dominion of Providence over the Passions of Man. He said, quote, "Nothing is more certain than that a general profligacy and corruption of manners make a people ripe for destruction. A good form of government may hold the rotten materials together for some time. But beyond a certain pitch, even the best constitution will be ineffectual, and slavery must ensue. On the other hand, when the manners of a nation are pure, when true religion and internal principles maintain their vigor, the attempts of the most powerful enemies to oppress them are commonly baffled and disappointed." Do we want the attempts of our enemies to be disappointed? I think we do, don't we? We don't want Russia and China, North Korea, Iran, and all these other hostile enemies. We don't want them and their system to conquer us, do we? Well, if we're divided inside of America, if we're at war with each other, if we're at war with the principles that made America great, if we're trying to undermine these pillars of our society that made us great, then we're weak, regardless of how many nuclear missiles we have, or tanks, or how great our new woke military is. Okay, none of that's going to matter in the end if we're not good people. So this great revolution for freedom, it began in the revolution of faith in people's hearts. Okay? Now, this liberty that our founding fathers won at the cost of their blood, their toil, their treasure, their tears, their sacrifices, their time that I'm sure they would have preferred to doing other things with. Thomas Jefferson always lamented that he couldn't be more at home with his farm, just relaxing and enjoying life. He didn't want to be in government. He hated it. But he did it because it was his duty. It was the right thing. He believed in it. It was correct. These principles, he couldn't just deny these principles of standing up against tyrants. Rebellion to tyrants is obedience to God. He was a Christian, as he himself said numerous times. "I am a real Christian." That's a Thomas Jefferson quote. He repeated on more than one occasion. Yet we still try to say he's an atheist and a deist. Crazy, right? We just deny reality. Don't listen to people like that anymore. Do your own research. Go look it up. So this liberty they gave us, it's severely impaired today, especially over the last year with the corona hoax and all that's come from that. The vaccine tyranny, the medical tyranny, the constant lies, the total infringement of our liberties, the emergency powers, which don't exist, by the way. They're not real. It's fictitious. It's just they convince people there's an emergency. We're going to take power, okay, for your good. All of this has severely chipped away at our liberty. Yet our Constitution still stands. It's still there. It still says I'm the supreme law of the land. Obey me. It still says if you don't listen to me, I can do away with you. Right? It's still there in black and white in the Constitution. So all we need is an educated citizenry who says, no, we're not going to listen to you. We're going to nullify everything you're doing. We're going to throw you out. We're going to prosecute you. We're going to put people in there who understand this because we understand it. So now we know that they understand it. Okay, but instead people are ignorant. They're apathetic. They don't understand the first thing about the Constitution. They haven't read it. And so they don't know when their leaders, who are supposed to be representing them, they don't know when these people are violating it. Okay, Republicans and Democrats alike just totally violate the Constitution day in and day out, over and over and over and over and over again. Donald Trump, best president in my lifetime, easily. He violated the Constitution quite a few times, including in this pandemic situation. It's the truth. Don't shoot the messenger. Go look it up yourself. Here's the thing. So both sides are corrupt. We need a wholesale change, and it begins in the heart and in the mind. Now, I want to end with a quote from Daniel Webster. He said this on Independence Day in 1851. Great speech. He said this, quote, "Our inheritance is an inheritance of American liberty. That liberty is characteristic, peculiar, and altogether our own. Nothing like it existed in former times, nor was known in the most enlightened states of antiquity, while with us its principles have become interwoven into the minds of individual men, connected with our daily opinions and our daily habits, until it is, if I may so say, an element of social as well as of political life. And the consequence is that to whatever nation an American citizen carries himself, he takes with him, fully developed in his own understanding and experience, our American principles and opinions and becomes ready at once in cooperation with others to apply them to the formation of new governments. The Founding Fathers believed very strongly not only in freedom for themselves, but freedom for everyone. They called it an empire of liberty that they were creating. Not an empire that would go conquer people, but a reformation in the mind that would just naturally spread itself. People around the world would look to America and say, wow, we want what they have. We want this prosperity that they have. That's a great place. I mean, that's why people today are risking their lives to get here by the millions. No one's running to North Korea. No one's running to Britain. Well, I guess some people from North Africa and the Middle East are kind of being shipped in there. But honestly, where in the world are people fleeing to? It's the United States, first and foremost, above anywhere else. That's not even up for dispute. Okay, people want to come here because even today, with how far we've sunken down, people understand how special this place is, and it was so much more so back then. And so Americans are supposed to spread this empire of liberty by being examples, this shining city on the hill, the light to the world. Okay? But we only draw light from the true light of the world, Jesus Christ. And so we need to reform our hearts, turn back to Him and the principles that were codified in our founding documents, including the Declaration of Independence, which we celebrate today. So this must be what we do. It's our task. We have to preserve liberty. We have to safeguard and bolster and promote our faith, our families, and our freedom. Those are the three great institutions, principles, verities that we must clamor for, that we must demand, that we must be jealous of and guard with all our strength. So I appreciate you being here and taking some time to talk with me on this day. It's a special time. It's a holy day. Independence Day is special. It's not just any other day. It's not just a time to have a barbecue or just to light some fireworks and get drunk with your family and friends. That's not a good thing to do on any day. This is a time of solemnity. Yes, it's a time to have fun. Do the fireworks. Fireworks are fun. They're beautiful. I think it's a really powerful, explosive reminder of what we're celebrating. We're celebrating this illumination of liberty as the sky is being illuminated in fantastic colors. It's a great tradition, but it should be, guns should be fired in the air. People should be marching in parades. We should be celebrating. It should be a fun time, but we should also be reading the Declaration of Independence, celebrating the men who wrote it, who signed their names. Do you know who they are? There are 56 men. Did you even know there are 56? How many of them could you name? People would probably say, like, oh, George Washington. No, George Washington didn't even sign it. Who signed it? Who are these men who were called traitors, who had a price on their head, who would be horribly killed by the crown if they were caught because they signed their names on this document? Who are these people? Who are these extraordinary patriots who stood up when it was needed? Remember them. Talk about them. Talk about what they did. Tell your family. Teach them all these principles of liberty so that they grow up, just like Daniel Webster said Americans of his day did, fully formed in their mind already, in their understanding what good government was. Because you can't say you're for good government if you don't know what it is. You can't say, yes, I support the Constitution if you've never read it. You can't say, yes, I support American independence if you've never read the Declaration of Independence and you don't know what the heck's in there. Okay? Our rights are sacred and undeniable. They are, yes, inherent, self-evident, but they're sacred. They're undeniable. This is intertwined with the most sacred duties of mankind, to stand up for this freedom and liberty. So please, stand up. Do it not for me. Do it for you and your family. Do it for your own future. Do it because it's the right thing. Do it because it's our duty to God. Do it because of this flag, because of what she stands for, because we're a rebel nation. Let's rebel against the tyrants who are trying to oppress us, who are trying to subjugate our families, who are stripping us of our wealth and our rights and our ability to speak freely. Let's do the right thing. Our side wins in the end. Don't ever doubt that. It's going to get darker before it gets lighter. It's going to get much worse, actually. But we win in the end. Never doubt that. God bless America. Happy Independence Day. Sic Semper Tyrannis. Long live liberty.